My parents made me buy my own car while giving my brother a $50,000 house down payment. When they asked me for money to save Dad from a lawsuit, I told them to ask their investment instead. I'm 34, male, the oldest of two. My brother Tyler, 28, male, is the baby, the miracle child, the one who could do no wrong. Me. I was the practice kid, the one they figured out their parenting mistakes on before perfecting their technique for round 2. The difference started early, and it wasn't subtle. When I turned 16, my parents sat me down for a serious talk about responsibility and earning what you want in life. Got a whole speech about how they'd struggled when they were young and how building character meant working for everything. Real inspiring stuff that sounded like it came from a motivational poster in a guidance counselor's office. They gave me 2 options: ride the bus to school like I'd been doing since freshman year, or get a job and save up for my own car. No third option where they helped me out. Just those 2. I chose the job route because riding the bus as a junior wasn't exactly doing wonders for my social life. Started working at a grocery store, bagging groceries and collecting shopping carts from the parking lot. 15 hours a week carefully scheduled around my classes and homework. Minimum wage at $7.25 an hour. Hands constantly freezing in winter when I was rounding up carts and sweating through my uniform in summer. Did the math obsessively. After taxes, I was taking home maybe $85 a week. Rent at home was 0, but everything else came out of my pocket. Gas money for when I finally got the car insurance maintenance food beyond what Mom cooked for family dinners. The car fund grew painfully slow. Took me 18 months to save enough for a beat-up Honda Civic with 140,000 meters paint fading to primer in spots and a check engine light that never went off no matter how many times I had it looked at. The previous owner had clearly treated it like a rental car, but it was mine. Paid for with money I earned pushing shopping carts in the rain. I remember the day I bought it. Dad came with me to the used car lot, looked it over, pointed out all its flaws like I couldn't see them myself, the rust eating through the wheel wells, the cracked dashboard, the way the engine made a weird ticking sound that the seller swore was totally normal. "You sure about this?" Dad asked. "It's what I can afford," I replied. He nodded like this was all part of some important lesson. "Well, you earned it. That's what matters." 3 years later, Tyler turned 16. I was away at college by then, but came home for his birthday weekend. Figured there'd be a family dinner, maybe a cake, the usual low-key celebration our family did. Instead, I pulled into the driveway to find a brand new Toyota Tacoma parked there with a giant red bow on the hood. Not used, not a few years old, brand freaking new with that new car smell, temporary plates, and the whole dealership presentation. Tyler was standing next to it, taking selfies while Mum cried happy tears, and Dad explained all the safety features, the backup camera, the lane departure warning, the automatic emergency braking, all the things that would keep their baby safe on the roads. I stood there holding the birthday card I'd bought, watching this scene unfold, feeling something cold settle in my chest. "We wanted to make sure he's safe," Mom explained when I asked about the double standard later. "You understand, right? He's our baby, and we're in a better position financially now. I was their baby once too. Pretty sure I didn't get any safer driving a car held together by rust and prayer, and the desperate hope that the check engine light wasn't indicating anything immediately fatal. Plus," Dad added, "you learned so much about responsibility by working for your car." We gave Tyler a different kind of lesson. The lesson being that if you're born 6 years later, life's a lot easier. College was the same story, but with more zeros involved. I'd busted my behind all through high school, maintaining a 3.6 GPA while working part-time, thinking good grades might mean scholarship opportunities, or at least some parental contribution toward tuition. Applied to state schools because that's what we could afford as a family according to Dad's serious talk about college financing. Got into a decent university about 2 hours away. Nothing fancy but solid with a good program and what I wanted to study. When financial aid letters came, my parents looked genuinely pained examining the numbers. They could maybe help with books and some living expenses, but tuition was on me. The disappointed looks on their faces made it clear they wished they could do more, but simply couldn't. So I took out student loans, the maximum amount allowed, because between tuition fees, room and board, and everything else, that's what I needed. Worked 25 hours weekly at the campus library scanning books and helping lost freshmen find the biology section. lived on ramen noodles, peanut butter sandwiches, and whatever free food I could get from campus events. Graduated in 4 years with $45,000 in debt that I'd be paying off until my mid-30s. But I graduated, did what I was supposed to do, made it work with no help beyond those book payments Mom had promised. Tyler's college experience full ride from the bank of Mom and Dad. Every semester paid in full up front. Nice 2-bedroom apartment off campus that he shared with one roommate. Money for food that didn't come in vacuum-sealed packages. He went to the same state university I did, but lived like he was attending some private institution with a trust fund backing him. I found out about the financial arrangement when I came home for Thanksgiving during Tyler's freshman year. He was complaining about his apartment's water pressure while I was mentally calculating if I could afford the gas to drive home for Christmas, or if I'd be spending it in my dorm eating cup noodles. "How much are they helping you with school?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh, they're covering everything," Tyler said, not even looking up from his phone. "Tuition, rent, food, money. Dad said he wanted me to focus on my education without worrying about work. Everything." "Yeah. Why?" "Just curious." Later I asked Mom about it privately. Why the different approach? "We're in a better financial position now," she explained, using the same line from the car conversation. "Your dad's business is doing better. We can afford to help Tyler in ways we couldn't help you. Plus, your struggles made you stronger. We're just trying to give Tyler different opportunities. Different opportunities, right? Like the opportunity to not eat ramen for 4 years straight or work graveyard shifts at the library during finals week because rent was due and student loans only covered so much." "Are you going to help me pay off my loans?" I asked. "Since finances are better now." Mom looked uncomfortable. "Those are your responsibility. You already completed school. It wouldn't be fair to give you money now when Tyler needs support for his current education." The logic was airtight if you didn't think about it too hard. Tyler needed money now for school, so he got it. I had needed money then for school but didn't get it. Apparently, the timing of your birth determined your financial support eligibility. After graduation, I moved to Boise and got a job as an electrician's apprentice. Wasn't glamorous, but the starting pay was decent and the work was steady. Started at the bottom, learning to run wire through attics in 100-degree heat and crawl through spaces that made me question my life choices. Got shocked more times than I could count because I was still learning what not to touch and when. But I was good at it. Really good. Had a knack for troubleshooting electrical problems and understanding how systems connected. Could look at a breaker panel and visualize the whole house's wiring in my head. The journeyman I trained under said I had natural talent, which felt good after years of being told I just needed to work harder. 5 years in, I got my journeyman license. 8 years in, I got my master electrician certification. By year 10, I was running my own small electrical contracting business with 3 employees and more work than I could handle. Wasn't getting rich, but was making solid money. Owned my house outright after 7 years of aggressive payments. Drove a paid-off truck and had savings that actually felt secure. Built everything myself. Every client relationship, every successful job, every dollar in my account came from my own work. Nobody handed me anything. Nobody smoothed the path. I just showed up every day and did the work until it added up to something. Tyler graduated college at 24. No debt, no work history beyond some casual summer stuff that Dad had arranged through business contacts, and a business degree he'd barely scraped through with a 2.7 GPA. Moved back home to figure things out and explore his options while living rent-free in his old bedroom. He bounced between entry-level jobs like a pinball. Marketing coordinator at a startup that folded after 8 months when their funding dried up. Sales associate at a tech company where he couldn't meet quotas because he treated cold calling like a suggestion rather than a requirement. Social media manager for a local business until they realized he didn't actually know anything about social media management beyond posting selfies and arguing in comment sections. Each job failure came with the same parental response. He's still finding his path. Not everyone blooms at the same pace. Some people need time to discover their passion. Meanwhile, I was discovering my passion for paying my mortgage on time and not living with my parents at 26 years old. The really fun part was listening to Tyler describe his job searches at family dinners. He turned down opportunities because they weren't the right fit, or didn't align with his values, or didn't offer the growth potential he needed. The irony of someone with no work history demanding growth potential was apparently lost on everyone but me. "I'm looking for something with real leadership opportunity," he'd say, pushing Mom's pot roast around his plate. "You've been out of college for 2 years," I pointed out once. "Maybe take something without leadership opportunity and earn your way up." Dad shot me a look. Everyone's career path is different. Tyler's being selective about his future. Selective. That's one word for unemployed and picky. 25 rolled around for Tyler, and my parents decided to invest in his future in a big way. Gave him $50,000 for a down payment on a house, not a loan, a gift. Helped him buy a nice 3-bedroom place in a good neighborhood with room to grow into. I found out about it when Mom called asking if I'd be interested in helping Tyler move. "He's buying a house. Isn't that exciting?" "How's he affording a house?" I asked. "He's been between jobs for 6 months. We're helping with the down payment. He got approved for a really good mortgage through Dad's bank contact. How much help?" We gave him $50,000. It's an investment in his future. I was quiet for a long moment. "That's generous. Well, we want to see him settled, and property is a good investment. The house will appreciate over time. I'd saved for 7 years to afford my down payment, lived in a studio apartment with neighbors who fought at 2 a.m. about whose turn it was to buy toilet paper, and a landlord who considered fixing things a suggestion rather than obligation. Ate more ramen as a working adult than I had in college. Put every spare dollar into savings, because I wanted to own something to have security, to not be at the mercy of landlords and lease agreements. When I finally bought my house at 31, it was a fixer-upper that needed new everything. The electrical was a disaster. Ironically, considering my profession, plumbing leaked, roof needed patches, HVAC system sounded like it was dying. Spent my weekends for 2 years replacing outlets, upgrading the electrical panel, learning plumbing through YouTube videos, and trial and error patching the roof myself because paying someone was too expensive. My parents came to the housewarming party after most of the major work was done. Walked through looking at everything I'd accomplished. Dad commented on the electrical work, noted that I'd done it right. Mom admired the kitchen I'd renovated myself. "We're really proud of your self-sufficiency," Dad said. "You didn't need anyone's help to do all this, didn't need it, or didn't get it. There's a difference." Tyler's housewarming party 3 years later had catered food, a professional photographer, and about 50 people drinking expensive wine in his move-in-ready house that needed zero work. My parents gave a speech about investing in family and helping the next generation get started right. I stood in the corner drinking overpriced beer and wondering if anyone else saw the irony, but looking around at the faces smiling and nodding along, apparently not. This was just how things were. Tyler got help. I got character building. Tyler got investments. I got independence. And somehow these were presented as equivalent. The favoritism was so obvious it became a running joke with my friends. My buddy Jake called my parents' house the Tyler Museum because every surface featured photos of Tyler's accomplishments. His high school graduation, even though his GPA was mediocre. His college graduation bought and paid for by them. His new truck, his house, multiple pictures of each milestone professionally framed. Me, maybe one picture from high school graduation tucked in the back corner of a bookshelf, half hidden behind Mom's collection of decorative plates. My college graduation wasn't on display at all. When I asked Mom about it once, she said she couldn't find the photos. They were somewhere in the computer, but she'd get around to printing them eventually. Tyler's house photos went up within a week of the housewarming party. Don't take it personally, my aunt told me during Thanksgiving one year, after a few glasses of wine, loosened her tongue. They just relate to Tyler more. He needs them. You're so independent you don't need them. That's the thing about being independent, because you have to be. Eventually, people convince themselves you prefer it that way. Like I chose to struggle through college working overnight shifts. Like I wanted to eat ramen until I couldn't stand the smell of it. Like independence was my personality trait instead of survival strategy. Tyler's financial situation was always mysterious to me. He had good job titles that somehow never translated to actual financial stability. Regional sales manager at a company I'd never heard of. Business development director for a startup that operated out of someone's garage. Strategic partnerships coordinator, which seemed to mean he went to a lot of lunch meetings. Always behind on something, always waiting for the next commission check that was definitely coming through, this time always about to close a big deal that would change everything. His social media showed expensive restaurants and weekend trips to Vegas, but somehow he was perpetually broke. My parents covered his shortfalls without hesitation car payment when he was between opportunities. HOA fees when a client payment was delayed, helped with the mortgage 1 month when his sales numbers were down, covered his health insurance premiums, paid for car repairs, slipped him grocery money, never called it enabling, always called it family supporting family during transitional periods. I never asked them for money, never needed to. Built my business through reputation and word of mouth, kept expenses low, saved consistently, lived below my means. Boring maybe, but effective. Had a fully funded emergency account retirement contributions, and still managed to take a decent vacation every year. Nothing fancy, usually camping trips or budget travel, but I paid for it myself and didn't come back in debt. The contrast between Tyler's lifestyle and mine couldn't have been starker. He was always one disaster away from financial collapse, propped up by parental bailouts. I was stable, but modest. He drove a BMW he couldn't afford. I drove a practical truck that was paid off. He lived in a house too big for one person in a neighborhood designed to impress. I lived in a modest home in a working-class area where I knew all my neighbors by name. But at family gatherings, he was the success story. The one with the impressive house and the fancy car and the important-sounding job title. I was just doing well with my little business. According to Mum's introductions to her friends, the breaking point came 6 months ago. Dad got into legal trouble. Nothing violent or criminal, but serious enough to require expensive lawyers and serious money. He'd been running a small property management company for years, managing about 30 rental properties for various owners who didn't want to deal with tenants directly. One of his rental properties had a tenant who got injured due to deferred maintenance. The guy had been complaining about flickering lights for months. Dad kept putting off dealing with it because electrical work is expensive, and the property owner was notoriously cheap about repairs. Eventually, the wiring problem caused a small fire that injured the tenant and damaged the unit. Tenant sued for negligence, claimed Dad knew about faulty wiring and did nothing to fix it despite repeated complaints. Had documentation of every call, every email, every time he'd reported the problem and been told it would be handled soon. Ironic, considering his son's an electrician who'd offered multiple times to inspect his properties for free. I'd mentioned it at probably 5 different family dinners. Hey Dad, I could look at your rental properties, make sure everything's up to code, no charge, just want to make sure they're safe. Dad always said he had it handled, had a guy who did electrical work cheap, didn't want to bother me with it. Everything was fine until it wasn't. The tenant's lawyers were aggressive medical bills from smoke inhalation and minor burns, lost wages from missing work pain and suffering emotional distress from losing his belongings in the fire. They were going for everything they could get, and they had a solid case. Dad had documentation proving he'd known about the electrical problem and had chosen to defer the fix. Dad's insurance covered some of it, but there were coverage limits and exclusions. Legal fees were piling up fast. His lawyer wasn't cheap, and the case was dragging on with depositions, expert witnesses, bringing in electrical engineers to testify about code violations, document review, motion hearings. Every meeting, every filing, every hour of attorney time was billable. By the time settlement talks started rolling around, Dad was looking at needing $50,000 beyond what insurance would cover. His retirement savings were tied up in investments he didn't want to liquidate because the market was down, and selling now would mean locking in losses. The property management company's accounts were lean after a rough year, where several owners had switched to competitors. He needed cash, and he needed it fast before the settlement deadline. That's when Mum called asking if we could have lunch. Just the two of us. Mother-son time. Should have known something was coming when she suggested a restaurant instead of her house. We met at this diner halfway between our houses, booth in the back away from other customers. She spent 20 minutes talking about everything except why we were there. How was business? How was the house? Had I been seeing anyone? She'd heard from a friend that her daughter was single. Would I be interested in being set up? All small talk that felt like warm-up stretches before a marathon. Finally, she got to it after we'd ordered, and the waitress had left. Your father's in a difficult position with this lawsuit, she said, stirring sugar into coffee she wasn't drinking, just kept stirring long after the sugar had dissolved. I waited. Knew where this was headed, but wanted to hear her say it. The legal fees are substantial, more than we anticipated. His lawyer is excellent, but expensive. How's the case going? They're working on a settlement. It's better than going to trial, which would cost even more. But the settlement amount plus the legal fees... She trailed off. How much does he need? I asked, directly, tired of the dance. 50,000 would cover it. The insurance is covering the rest. We'd pay you back, of course, with interest. Just as soon as the investments recover and we can liquidate without taking such a huge loss. There it was. After 34 years of watching them pour money into Tyler while giving me character-building speeches about hard work, they wanted me to bail out Dad with an amount exactly equal to what they'd gifted Tyler for a house down payment. The symmetry was almost poetic. That's a lot of money, I said carefully, taking a sip of my own coffee to buy time. We know. We wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. Your father's beside himself with worry. He's not sleeping. The stress is affecting his health. Her eyes were getting shiny, like she might cry. We've explored every other option. The bank won't give us a loan against the house without a lengthy approval process we don't have time for. The investments are down. We're cash poor right now. I sat there for a moment, watching her twist her napkin into knots. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately. He's my dad. He's my family. Helps family, right? That's what they'd always said when explaining why Tyler needed another bailout. But another part of me, the part that had eaten ramen for 4 years and worked in 100-degree addicts and saved every dollar while watching them fund Tyler's life, that part was screaming something different. Have you asked Tyler? I asked. Mom shifted in her seat, broke eye contact. We mentioned the situation to him, and he's dealing with some cash flow issues right now. The commission structure at his new job is complicated, and he hasn't gotten a full paycheck yet, so he can't help. He offered what he could. It's not quite enough to make a difference. How much did he offer? She looked down at her shredded napkin. $5,000. $5,000. The guy who got a free ride through college worth at least $100,000 in tuition and living expenses. The guy who got a new truck at 16 worth 30 grand. The guy they gave a $50,000 down payment to could spare 5 grand when Dad was facing financial ruin. Meanwhile, they were asking me for $50,000 10 times what their investment could produce in an emergency. I need to think about it, I said. Mom's face fell. The disappointment was immediate and obvious. Your father really needs an answer soon. The settlement deadline is in 2 weeks. After that, we go to trial and the costs multiply exponentially. I understand. I just need some time to consider my options. What options? He's your father. He's in trouble, and I need to think about whether I can afford to help given my own financial obligations. You have a successful business. You own your home. You've always been so good with money. She was pleading now. Surely you have $50,000 available. Having money available and being willing to lend it are 2 different things. The words came out harsher than I intended. Mom flinched like I'd slapped her. I never thought you'd be the type to abandon family when they need help, she said quietly. And there it was. The guilt trip, the manipulation, the reframing of my hesitation as some moral failing instead of a reasonable response to decades of unequal treatment. I'll think about it, I repeated. I'll give you an answer by the end of the week. We finished lunch in uncomfortable silence. She tried making more small talk, but it fell flat. When we left, she hugged me in the parking lot and whispered, "Please help him. He's desperate." The desperation I felt eating ramen every day to save money apparently didn't count. But Dad's desperation over legal fees from a problem I could have prevented for free that was worth 50 grand of my money. I drove home thinking about nothing else. That evening I called Jake, told him the whole situation over drinks at his place. His response was immediate and creative, but I'll spare you the exact wording since profanity isn't allowed here. Basically, he thought it was completely ridiculous that my parents expected me to cover what amounted to Tyler's house down payment in legal fees. Let me get this straight, Jake said, pacing his living room. They gave your brother 50 grand for a house, but now they want you to give them 50 grand for a lawyer. Pretty much. And Tyler's offering 5 grand. Yep. So their investment is returning about 10% of their emergency need while expecting you to cover 100%. Put that way, it sounded even worse. What are you going to do? Jake asked. I honestly don't know. Part of me wants to help because he's my dad, but another part of me is so angry I can barely think straight. You've got every right to be angry. They've treated you like a second-class citizen your entire life. Now they want you to rescue them while Tyler gets to skate by. Maybe I should just suck it up and help. It's the right thing to do, isn't it? Jake stopped pacing and looked at me seriously. The right thing according to who? According to parents who've shown clear favoritism for decades. Or according to you, the person who's been cleaning up everyone's mess while getting zero appreciation. I didn't have an answer for that. I spent 3 days thinking about it. Looked at my finances. I had the money. Business was really good. Savings were healthy, and $50,000 wouldn't destroy me financially. I could technically afford it. But could I afford it emotionally? Could I afford to be the bailout for people who'd spent my entire life investing in someone else? Could I afford to enable the same pattern that had created Tyler's complete inability to function as a financial adult? The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Not at Dad's legal trouble. That was unfortunate and partially his own fault for ignoring safety issues, but accidents happen. I was angry at the assumption that I'd just cover it, that after a lifetime of being treated as less important, less worthy of investment, I'd step up and prove them right, that I was the responsible one who'd handle problems. While Tyler coasted, Tyler still lived in that house they'd helped him buy, still drove a car he couldn't have afforded without their help, paying his way through college debt-free, still benefited from every advantage they'd given him. And when crisis hit, he could spare $5,000 from a house that had probably appreciated $30,000 since he bought it. I made my decision, called Mom, and asked both parents to come to my house for dinner that Friday. Figured if we were having this conversation, it should be on my turf. Spent the afternoon before they arrived, making sure the house looked good, not showing off exactly, but reminding them what self-sufficiency actually looked like. The kitchen I'd renovated myself, the electrical work I'd done throughout the house, the landscaping I'd installed, every improvement paid for with money I'd earned, work I'd done, they showed up right on time. Dad looked tired, older somehow. The stress of the lawsuit was wearing on him. He'd lost weight, had more grey hair than I remembered. The lines around his eyes were deeper. Mom looked nervous, probably sensing this wasn't going to go how she'd hoped, kept checking her phone like she expected a call that would save her from an uncomfortable conversation. I made dinner. Nothing fancy, just grilled chicken and roasted vegetables. We ate mostly in silence. Small talk about the weather, about local news, about anything except the giant elephant sitting at the table with us. Finally, over coffee, I addressed it directly. I've thought about your request, I started, and I need to say some things first. Dad nodded, setting down his coffee cup. We appreciate you considering it. We know it's a lot to ask. It is a lot to ask. It's also a lot to process considering our family history. Mom frowned. What do you mean? I mean the very different ways you've treated me and Tyler financially over the years. We've always tried to be fair, Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. Fair, Dad. When I was 16, you made me buy my own car while working minimum wage bagging groceries. When Tyler turned 16, you handed him keys to a brand new $30,000 truck. We were in different financial positions. Mom interjected quickly. You were in different financial positions when I needed help with college too. Apparently, I graduated with $45,000 in debt. Tyler graduated with zero debt and money in the bank from the allowance you gave him all 4 years. They both looked uncomfortable. Dad couldn't meet my eyes. Mom was tearing up her napkin again. We did what we thought was right at the time. Dad said, "We wanted you to be independent, to be strong, to not need anyone. Mission accomplished. I'm independent. I don't need anyone. But that's not really the same as being treated fairly, is it? We tried our best," Mom said quietly. "You tried your best for Tyler. You gave him every advantage you could afford, and some you probably couldn't. For me, you tried your best to teach lessons about responsibility and hard work. Different approaches for different kids, I guess." "What do you want from us?" Dad asked, frustration creeping into his voice. "An apology. Fine. We could have handled things better. We made mistakes, but that doesn't change that I need help right now. You're right. It doesn't change that you need help, but it does change who you should be asking. You made a choice about where to invest your money and energy. I'm not responsible for that choice backfiring." Mom started crying. The guilt trip was in full effect. "I can't believe you'd abandon your father like this after everything we've done for you. Everything you've done for me, like making me pay for my own car, my own college, my own everything while funding Tyler's entire life. That's what you've done for me. We raised you. We fed you. We kept a roof over your head. Dad said that's called being parents. That's the baseline legal requirement. You don't get special credit for not committing child neglect." The silence that followed was brutal. We gave Tyler advantages because he needed them. Mom finally said, "You never needed help. You always figured things out." "I figured things out because I didn't have a choice. Because you made sure I didn't have a choice. You gave Tyler choices and safety nets and financial cushions. You gave me character building. And look how well you turned out." Dad said, "You're successful. You own your business. You're financially stable. And Tyler lives in your basement at 29 years old because every advantage you gave him taught him nothing except how to wait for the next handout." That hit them hard. Dad's jaw tightened. Mom made a small sound like I'd physically hurt her. "Your brother is going through a difficult time," Mom defended. "Tyler's always going through a difficult time. How much money have you given him over the years? 50 grand for the house, another 20 or 30 in various bailouts. Car payments, insurance, rent assistance before the house, groceries, spending money. How much total?" They didn't answer because they didn't want to do the math. "Meanwhile, I've never asked you for $1. Not once in my adult life. Built everything myself while you poured money into someone who can't manage to stay employed or solvent for more than a few months at a time. He's trying," Mom said weakly. "He's 28 years old with every advantage you could give him, and he's offering $5,000 in your moment of crisis. $5,000 out of a house he owns because you gave him the down payment. That's his contribution to saving his father from financial ruin." "What's your point?" Dad asked, voice hard. "Now my point is this. You made an investment choice years ago. You chose to invest heavily in Tyler, while I got life lessons and bootstrap speeches. Now you need a return on that investment, and it's not performing. That's not my problem to solve." "So you're saying no?" Mom asked, mascara running down her face. "I'm saying talk to your investment. You gave Tyler every financial advantage hoping it would pay off. Well, here's the payoff moment. Time to collect your returns. Let him step up. He doesn't have $50,000, Dad said. Then maybe the investment didn't work out. Maybe all that money you poured into him while I ate ramen and worked 2 jobs didn't actually create the successful, stable son you were hoping for." The silence was crushing. "We're your parents," Mom finally said. "We're asking for help. Doesn't that mean anything to you? You're my parents who've spent decades making it clear through your actions that Tyler was the priority investment. You wanted me independent and self-sufficient, and I am. Now you want me to bail out Dad while Tyler contributes 10% of what you gifted him. No, I won't do it. Your father could lose everything," Mom said, voice rising with desperation. "Then maybe he should have taken me up on those free electrical inspections I offered. Maybe he should have maintained his properties properly. Maybe he should have thought about consequences before deferring maintenance to save a few $100. Dad flinched at that. "You're throwing that in my face now. I'm pointing out that this situation has multiple layers of preventable mistakes. You need money for legal fees stemming from an electrical problem I could have prevented for free. You're asking me, the son who built everything himself with no help instead of relying on Tyler, the son you built with constant financial support. Yeah, there's some frustration there. What do you want?" Dad asked, an apology acknowledgement. "What would it take for you to help? I don't want anything. That's the point. I'm not negotiating. I'm not setting conditions. I'm just not fixing this problem that you created through decades of unequal treatment and poor decisions." Mom stood up, chair scraping loudly against my floor. "I can't believe you do this. Your own father." "My own father, who made it very clear that family money goes to Tyler. So let Tyler handle it. He's the one you invested in. Time to see what that investment is worth." "He doesn't have it," Mom shouted. "Then maybe you backed the wrong horse. Maybe you should have invested in the son who actually knows how to manage money and build something sustainable instead of the son who needs constant bailouts to maintain a lifestyle he can't afford." The words hung there. Definitely true. Absolutely. Dad stood up slowly. "We should go. Obviously we're not going to get help here." "Did you actually expect to?" I asked. "After 34 years of making it clear, Tyler was the priority. Did you really think I'd just hand over 50 grand and pretend none of that history mattered? We thought you were a better person than this. Mom said I'm exactly the person you made me. Self-sufficient, independent, and aware of my worth. You taught me that family is about investing in people. Well, you invested in Tyler. Go collect your returns." They left without another word. Didn't slam the door, didn't make a scene, just walked out quietly, like they'd finally run out of arguments. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after they left, listening to the silence. Part of me felt guilty. Part of me felt relieved. Mostly, I just felt tired. Tired of being the backup plan. Tired of being taken for granted. Tired of watching Tyler fail upward while I succeeded sideways. The next morning I woke up to 17 missed calls and a bunch of texts. Most were from Mom, several from Dad, and surprisingly, 3 from Tyler. Tyler's messages were enlightening. "Dude, what did you say to them?" Followed by, "They're freaking out about money." And finally, "Come on man, Dad needs help. Can't you just loan it?" I called him back around noon. "What's going on?" Tyler asked when he picked up. "Mom and Dad asked me for $50,000 for Dad's legal fees." I said no. Silence on the other end. "You said no. I told them to ask you. You're their investment after all. What's that supposed to mean? It means they gave you a free ride through college, a new truck at 16 and 50 grand for a house down payment. I got lectures about character building and student loan debt. Now Dad needs money, and you're offering $5,000 while expecting me to cover the rest." "I don't have $50,000, Tyler said defensively. "You have a house worth way more than that, because they gave you the down payment. I can't just liquidate my house." That's insane. Funny they were asking me to liquidate my savings. Savings I built myself while working in attics and crawl spaces. But somehow that's different when it's you. This is Dad we're talking about. Our father. Yeah, the dad who handed you everything while making me earn every dollar. Now he needs money, and the son he invested in can barely scrape together 10% of what was gifted to him. That should tell you something about the return on their investment. You're being petty. I'm being honest. They made a choice about where to put their resources. That choice has consequences. You're the consequence. Tyler hung up on me. Over the next week, the pressure campaign intensified. Phone calls from relatives I barely knew asking me to reconsider. Messages from family friends explaining how important family support is. Even my aunt, who'd once told me not to take the favoritism personally, called to lecture me about duty. Everyone had the same message. Family helps family in times of crisis. Dad was in real trouble. I had the means to help. Why was I being so stubborn and vindictive? The answer was simple, but nobody wanted to hear it. Because for 34 years, family helps family meant help. Tyler. Now that the script was flipped, now that I was asking Tyler to help Dad instead of me covering everything, suddenly it was about me being petty and holding grudges. Jake's response when I told him about the pressure campaign was perfect. "Tell them you're teaching Dad a life lesson about consequences, character building stuff. He'll understand." 2 weeks later, Mom called again. Her voice sounded different, more subdued, less confrontational, defeated even. "We found another solution," she said without preamble. "Okay, we liquidated some investments at a loss, took out a loan against the house, called in some favors from friends. We scraped together the $50,000. I'm glad you found a solution." "I hope you're happy," she said, bitterness creeping back into her voice. "We've had to drain our retirement savings. The penalties for early withdrawal were substantial. We're probably going to have to delay retiring for several more years now." "I'm sorry it came to that," I said, and I meant it. I didn't want them to suffer financially, but this wasn't my crisis to solve. You could have helped. You chose not to. Tyler could have helped more than $5,000. He chose not to, but somehow that's different. He helped what he could, $5,000 out of a house. You gave him a $50,000 head start on plus zero debt from college that you paid for plus the truck you bought him. That's his what he could. Maybe if you taught him the same lessons about responsibility that you taught me, he'd have been able to contribute more. You're never going to let this go, are you? Let what go? The decades of watching you invest everything in him while giving me bootstrap speeches? No, probably not. But I'm also not going to pretend that your financial crisis is my responsibility when you've spent my entire life making it clear I wasn't your financial priority. Mom hung up without saying goodbye. Things were tense for months after that. Holidays were awkward exercises and avoiding eye contact and making small talk that went nowhere. Dad barely spoke to me except when necessary. Tyler avoided me entirely, even changed his seat at Thanksgiving dinner so he wouldn't have to sit near me. Mom oscillated between cold silence and passive-aggressive comments about family loyalty. Some people value family over money, she'd say to no one in particular when I was in the room. Some people remember where they came from, But something interesting started happening. The lawsuit settled. Dad's lawyer managed to negotiate a reasonable agreement, and between insurance and the money they'd scraped together, it was handled without going to trial. Dad had to sell off part of the property management business to stay liquid and downsized his operation significantly. But he wasn't financially destroyed, just diminished. Tyler's job situation got worse. Lost another position after 4 months when the company restructured and eliminated his department. Spent 3 months unemployed, burning through his minimal savings. Finally took a job paying significantly less than his previous ones, barely covering his mortgage and basic bills. He started calling Dad, asking for help with mortgage payments. The same mortgage Dad had made possible with that $50,000 gift. Except Dad didn't have help to give anymore. The retirement savings were depleted from early withdrawal penalties. The home equity was borrowed against for the legal fees. The investment accounts had been liquidated at a loss. There was no more bank of Mum and Dad, because they'd emptied it to cover Dad's crisis. Tyler couldn't believe it. I heard through the grapevine my aunt has a big mouth that he'd actually shouted at Dad about how they'd always helped before, and how they were abandoning him when he needed the most. The irony was spectacular. 4 months after the lawsuit settled, Tyler called me directly. First time we'd spoken since that awkward conversation about Dad's legal fees. "I need some advice," he said. "No preamble, no small talk, just straight to it about money stuff. I'm in over my head." "What kind of over your head?" "Behind on mortgage, credit cards maxed out, car payment is late. I don't know what to do." "Have you talked to Mom and Dad?" "They can't help. They're tapped out after the lawsuit stuff." Dad actually laughed when I asked. Tyler's voice was bitter. Laughed. Said, "Maybe I should have saved better." There it was. The investment had dried up, and suddenly Tyler was learning the same lessons about financial responsibility that I'd been forced to learn at 16. "What kind of advice are you looking for?" I asked. "I don't know. You always seem to have your stuff together. How do you do it?" I almost laughed at the question. After years of watching him get every advantage while I struggled, he was asking me how I managed to be financially stable. "Budget," I said simply. "Track every dollar. Cut unnecessary expenses. Build an emergency fund. Stop living beyond your means. That's it. That's it. It's not complicated, just disciplined. But what about right now? I need money now. Get a second job. Sell stuff you don't need. Cut up the credit cards. Downsize if you have to. Figure out payment plans with your creditors. Stop going out to eat. Cancel subscriptions. Live like you're broke until you're not actually broke." That sounds miserable. It is. But it works. I did it for years. Can't you just loan me something? No. Come on, man. You're my brother. I am your brother. The brother who watched you get every advantage while I built everything from scratch. The brother you couldn't spare more than $5,000 for when Dad was in actual legal crisis. Now you want a loan. That was different. How that he didn't have an answer for that. Just heavy breathing on the other end of the line. "Tyler, I'm not your bank. I'm not Mom and Dad's bank. I worked for everything I have because nobody gave me a choice. You had every choice and made bad ones. That's not my problem to solve. So you're just going to let me lose my house. You're not going to lose your house if you actually address the problem, cut expenses, get additional income, make a budget, and stick to it. But I'm not going to bail you out so you can keep avoiding the consequences of your choices." He hung up. The Wilson family seems to specialize in dramatic phone hang-ups. 6 months later, Tyler had to sell the house. Couldn't keep up with payments, couldn't get help from Mom and Dad anymore, and refused to make the lifestyle changes necessary to stay afloat. The house they'd gifted him a down payment for got sold at a small loss after closing costs and realtor fees. He moved back in with our parents. At 29 years old, back in his childhood bedroom, working a job he hated for less money than he'd ever made. The golden child had tarnished. Meanwhile, my business was thriving. Hired 2 more electricians to keep up with demand. Bought a second work truck. Was getting referrals faster than I could schedule them. Had to turn down work because I was booked solid 3 months out. Financial stability. I'd built myself brick by brick with nobody's help.